This face belongs on the tizzy.
Yeah! You know who it is, you know what it is. I'm your host, Billy D. Braille, a.k.a. Mr. Talkit, a.k.a. the voice box of the culture, man. Today we in tune into a special installment of Talk Your Talk. I'm going to let my guest introduce herself.
I am London Taj. A lot of you all may have seen me on social media. I go by London Taj on social media, and I run a media platform called Classic Conversations. Today, however, I am here as Deidre Stevens, as a public school educator, to talk about education here on Talkit TeeVee. So excited to be here.
I'm glad you came through. Good talk, good talk. So let's start off with this. Let's get your background. Like, where were you born? You know, and where'd you go to school?
I was born at St. Mary's Hospital. I went and I attended pre-K. St. Mary's Hospital is in Athens, Georgia, by the way. I attended pre-K at Athens Tech. I attended kindergarten at Alps Road Elementary. And after kindergarten, I attended Oconee County Public Schools from first grade, the end of kindergarten all the way to 8th grade. I came back to Athens to attend school in 9th grade at Clark Central, where I graduated from. It's my alma mater.
All right. Where'd you go to school after Clark Central?
After Clark Central, I went to Armstrong Atlantic State University down in Savannah, Georgia, to major in. At first, I actually started majoring in psychology, and then I switched my major to early childhood education with a minor in middle grades. After that, I went on to attend and get my master's in school counseling. I did not finish up the master's. I stopped the master's program.
Okay. So let me ask you this: how did your road to becoming an educator begin? Like, what put you on the path to becoming an educator?
Growing up in Athens was really interesting because I had some different dynamics going on with me. I started out with a 2-parent home, and education was really, really important. My dad was actually in school at Athens Tech. They had a program for the students there to have their children go to school there. So that was really interesting. And then my mom and dad divorced, and I was placed in Oconee County school system. So I would go to school in Oconee County, and then after school, my mom would bring me to Magnolia Street where my grandparents stayed, and she'd have to go to work at night, and I would be in Magnolia and other areas around Athens anytime I was not in school. What I did notice is that the more that I attended school in Oconee County, it seemed like the further I got away from people that were in Athens as far as relatability. It really did seem that way. At the time when I was growing up, it was a mentality to where if you go to school in Oconee, then you're not from Athens.
Right.
There were different things going on in Oconee County that necessarily weren't going on academically here in Athens, Clark County. So there were things that I picked up on fast, reading, the way that I talked and spoke to people. And then when I would go to Lay Park, for instance, during the summer, I would stick out or whatever amongst people. People like, okay, I kind of know something about you, but I don't know a lot about you. So when I came to Clark Central, it really, really hit me to become more interested in education because it was something that I was just naturally interested in. But I noticed with the population at Clark Central, everybody was not interested in education. A lot of people were interested in clothing, hairstyles, fashion, gossip, and things like that. But to have conversations about education amongst your peers was not the cool thing to do, and I was trying to understand why. So I started paying more attention to the instructors, and I noticed that there was a gap between relatability between instructors and the student population. So I decided once I actually went to college that I wanted to take a step and get into the education program to see if I could be relatable to students. If I could actually not have the feeling that I used to feel sitting in classes like this person is boring, this person don't know what they're talking about, this person don't know nothing about me and can't tell me nothing about nothing. Something like that. So I wanted to actually put a new spin on what people of color viewed education as. So I went ahead and took a step, changed my major from psychology, switched to early childhood education. The reason I switched to early childhood education is because I started out in psychology, and one thing I do know through all of the research and different books that I read on the psychology level was a lot of issues start at the foundation early in early childhood. So I wanted to step into the early childhood field and bring a whole new flavor and perspective into the early childhood field so that I could potentially help people earlier on in life and build more skills and actually understand every time you step into a public school education building why you're actually stepping into the building, because a lot of students come in and don't know. So I just wanted to do something different, add a new spin, add my own little twist to public school education.
Oh, that's good talk. So I see being from your Coney school system and the Clark school system, that kind of gave you both views of how things are done. So you kind of blended those together to form your teaching styles.
Yes.
Okay, okay,
Yes,
that's
I
great.
did.
That's great. That's great. That's
Yeah.
great. So also let me ask you this then: how long have you been teaching, and what grade do you teach, and or what grades have you taught? If it's been various ones, or you've been in the same grade the whole time?
Okay, so I have been a certified educator in the state of Georgia for 15 years. To go back a little bit further, when I was at Clark Central, I did a co-op at Little Ones Academy for a year.
Oh, my daughter went there.
I love Little Ones Academy. That's where I really just started getting a foundation and an understanding of what it takes to help someone who's in the early development stages of their life become successful. And once I actually attended college, I was a teacher's assistant at Kicklighter Academy, which is a school for autistic children. So I worked there for 3 years before I even graduated and got my actual certification to become an educator. So I've been teaching for 15 years, and if you add on the other experience before that, about 18 to 20 years.
Okay, good talk, good talk.
Yeah.
You kind of spoke on this in your introduction, but let me ask you, how would you compare the school district that you attended and grew up in to the school district that you're now teaching in?
I've taught in a lot of different school districts. I started out once I got my degree and got my professional certificate to be a certified teacher. I went into a fifth grade classroom and taught all subjects in Savannah, Georgia. I did that for 2 years, and then I transitioned into a math lab where I taught the entire school math. So it was kind of like a PE art. They would rotate to me for math skills. And then I went and taught first grade down in Clayton County, which was completely different from Savannah. And now I'm in DeKalb County, where I've taught fourth grade reading and language arts. I've taught fifth grade reading and language arts. I've taught fourth grade mathematics for the last 5 years now. What I can say about all of those different school districts, one thing that I did notice was a lack of resources. So, like with the school districts, Savannah, Clayton County, DeKalb County, I did notice that they don't take their students on a lot of field trips, so they're really not exposed to a lot, and you would think that they are. And I feel like both Oconee and Athens Clarke County do a much better job. At least they did. I'm not sure how it is now, of exposing students to things in the real world and giving them those hands-on real life experiences, taking them out so they can actually be out in the world and see, things, whether it's going to different colleges or band trips, things like that. Another thing that I did notice on the flip side in Savannah, Clayton County, and DeKalb County is they actually do things that the student populations enjoy, where Oconee County and Clarke County, the experience that I had, things that the students enjoyed was kind of shunned. Like the principals would get on the internet, I mean, not on the internet, Lord, on the intercom,
Right.
and say things like, when we're at the homecoming, don't be doing all that bending over and stuff like that, not realizing that, I mean, you could go through a whole African history of those types of dances and things like that. So it kind of makes the student population indirectly feel ashamed of who they are. I didn't really agree with that. Another thing is like just different foods and just actually taking time to get to know your population and bring things that the population you're serving, bring things into the school system that they actually are interested in, and actually give them a reason to show up to school and want to be there. Besides, I got all these rules. I can't do this. I can't say that. I can't do anything but what you tell me to. I feel like that strips individuality.
Right.
Where the other school districts, to me, give students, they pay more attention to individual and they try to implement things that can expand on individuals and not try to slash who they are as individuals down so they just become these perfectly molded program robots. Yeah, so I would say yeah, that's probably the biggest two comparisons that I can think of between where I've worked and how I grew up.
Okay. Well, also, can you speak on some of the challenges that today's educators face, compared to like as the educators say, like back in the day would have faced? Like, what are some of the differences and the challenges that you face on a daily basis going into the classroom?
The size, the number of students in a class, and the behaviors that they bring into the classroom with them. I feel like when I was growing up, just thinking about my experiences, the numbers in the classroom were 25, sometimes 30. So it was kind of still the same as far as the class size, but the student behaviors that were popping off in the class weren't as many. It might be one or two students who just showing out every now and then. But when you got 25 students in the class and 14, 15 of
Right,
them
right, right.
are just randomly yelling out, randomly calling people names, randomly hitting people for no reason at all, and there's no support with educators. When educators do write-ups, quote-unquote write-ups, that's very political because what the what the community really doesn't understand is that there are limits to suspensions and ISS is it's all about numbers. So there's a cap on what an administrator will actually do and when they'll do it. A lot of times they're going to wait until after testing. Usually the Georgia Milestones test is a big test for a lot of schools. Well, really all the schools in the state of Georgia, and it's all about making sure that these students are in classes a certain number of days and then they take that test. Now, after that, then they'll start to deal with behavior. But behavior and helping students with social, emotional issues and things like that is not a top priority, and it should be.
Definitely.
I feel like that's a big challenge. Also, having teachers' assistants. I remember classrooms having teachers' assistants, or even if they didn't have one for every classroom, it was one on a grade level who would come through.
Right, right.
Now, after kindergarten, first grade, that's about it.
Really?
The teachers aren't really getting much assistance in the classroom. So when you're trying to differentiate instruction to meet individual learning styles, and you're trying to be effective in helping students close gaps, it becomes very difficult for only one person to do.
Absolutely.
Especially when you're being pulled in all kind of different meetings and phone calls and paperwork and all kind of stuff like that. So those are some big challenges: the numbers, the behaviors, and the actual staff. Not having enough staff to really work with the students the way that the students really deserve to be worked with.
Wow, interesting, interesting. So also, what are some of the personal rewards that you get for being an educator slash teacher? What are some of the personal rewards that you get for yourself?
It's a lot of rewards. One thing I did not think of when I decided to switch from psychology to education was the amount of students that are raped by their own family members, brothers, cousins. The amount of students out here that don't have a home. They're bouncing from auntie house, grandma house. We consider those homeless students. They're living in cars. They're living in hotels. I didn't realize that there was such an overwhelming amount, especially of students of color who are dealing with this at an early age, at an elementary age, and expected to master all of these skills and care about what teachers are talking about and trying to teach them when they're dealing with all this stuff on the back end, and the schools aren't providing enough support counseling wise for the students for them to really take value in what it is that we're trying to do with them. I feel like it's really rewarding for me, even though it's a stressful job, when a student 5-10 years later finds me and sends me an email saying thank you so much for what you told me about this, and that. It's like, okay, well, as long as I can reach one person, and I've worked with thousands of students, but if I can reach one, then that's a big reward for me, because that's life changing. That means I've done something positive that this person will never ever forget in their life. That means a lot to me. That really does.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: what are some of the misconceptions that the community and parents may have about public education or public educators?
I think some of the misconceptions that the community may have is that teachers make all the decisions. So whatever goes on in their classroom, it's because they decided for that to happen. If they decided to only spend a week on one skill, that's because that's what they wanted to do. A teacher has no power. Let's just go ahead and put that out there. A teacher is one of the lowest on the totem pole in education. A teacher just is there to carry out a script. There's literally a script. There's literally a certain amount of time that you spend on this quote unquote script. And the script is the curriculum and how long you spend teaching skills. What they don't take into consideration, because a lot of the schools basically go by a Common Core curriculum that is mandated by the state of Georgia. A lot of times the state and the districts don't take into consideration that different schools have different needs, and you might not be able to teach a skill in 2 weeks, have them actually learn, master it, come back to it later in the year and actually show that they can do that. So that to me is a really big misconception, is that parents are thinking about teachers as being the people who are in charge making the decisions.
Right.
So when they complain about things that are going on, it's always on the teacher, not realizing that the teacher is at the bottom and is being, it's all kind of stuff being stacked up on the teacher to where they want to help parents and students, but it's kind of hard because there's certain frames put in place that have to be followed. And if you go outside of those frames, there are administrators that come in, evaluate, and dock you. You know, and nobody wants to get a bad evaluation because now you start talking about people's money.
Right.
That's a huge misconception.
Wow, it's valuable information on a lot of information I wasn't aware of. That's interesting. Well, also, as a parent, what is some of the information and like what are the steps that a parent can do throughout the school year? You know, that they can request from the educator, from the teacher, that will help their job flow a little more easy.
Parents, it would be really, really great for parents to request data. And when I say data, your child, when they go into public school, the teacher is constantly taking data on them in all types of forms, and to focus on the standardized testing data. A lot of students take a test and then you get those results printed, they send them home, and the parents don't really know what it really means. They just looking for a pass or a fail.
Exactly.
And
They don't know. They don't know. It's kind of like reading the fine line.
So what that data tells you is what your kids' strengths and weaknesses are, and it helps parents, students, and teachers when parents actually ask, what are the weaknesses? Give me the exact weaknesses right now, and what can I do at home to help close these gaps? Because parents don't understand, like I said, that we only have a certain amount of time to work on skills, and we can try to go back in small group and try to reteach some things, but it's not going to be as in-depth as it was the first go-round. So kids aren't getting it, then literally teachers are moving because they're on a pacing chart and they have to move.
Okay.
So definitely asking for standardized testing information and an interpretation of what that is. What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? And what are some resources and websites that you can go to actually implement at home, and then actually make sure they do something at home. And I think a lot of parents are kind of turned off by putting in some extra work academically at home. Not all, but a lot of parents, particularly in low economic areas,
they feel like, I'm now doing the teacher job.
But really just think about like anybody in any profession. If you don't put in any practice, how are you ever going to be good at it? You can go to basketball practice and you can go through all the drills and stuff at basketball practice, but if that's the only time you're doing it, then how are you going to expect to grow?
Exactly.
So it doesn't have to be 30 minutes, an hour, because I know a lot of parents are working sometimes multiple jobs. It's a lot of single parent homes, but 5 to 10 minutes on one weakness in one academic subject area a day. Like, it doesn't have to be overwhelming amount of time. Any little thing counts. It helps.
Well, spending from that, from your perspective and your expert opinion, how important is parent involvement in the school, in student success?
Parent involvement is everything, and it seems like since I've been in education, it's been some type of disconnect where the community looks at the school as something separate from themselves. Like, this is an institution that has its own rules and does what they want to do with my child when they're there. And that's not necessarily the case. Schools are for the community. So if the community doesn't like something, then the community, if it has its power in numbers, so if they're united and they start showing up to PTA meetings, board meetings, even start putting pressure on the state departments about pacing, about the number of students in the class, about the lack of counseling services, about the lack of special needs services and things like that. It can change, but if the public doesn't step up and actually voice concerns, then the system is going to keep running like it's running, and they're not going to care. That's, yeah. Parent involvement is everything. And I think some parents, there are some overzealous parents that feel like parent involvement is wanting to be in the classroom and wanting to tell a teacher or wanting to tell people who are working inside of the schools how to do their job. That's not necessarily parent involvement. Parent involvement is, okay, what kind of supplies do the kids need? Could you come in and could you work with a small group on reading? If you can't come in because it's COVID, it's monkeypox, all this stuff, is there some type of virtual situation that can be set up for this amount of time where students can actually see you virtually and actually work with you on different things? And you don't have to be a teacher or a master, but I think parents, a lot of parents that I've worked with, because I say this because it's not all parents, it's just specific locations,
right.
In certain districts. I think parents are kind of nervous because they're feeling like, well, I'm not an educator. I'm not an educator. I haven't gone to college. I can't do this. And putting that block saying you can't is already, you're already closing the door before it opens. I mean, it's just going to stay closed, you know? So actually just having confidence in, okay, if I'm not really sure how to help my child with this, then I'm going to ask the teacher what would be the simplest, easiest way for me to learn how to help my child at home. It just that little bit can help so much with what teachers are actually trying to do. The teachers that care.
Right.
Are actually trying to do with students inside the classroom.
Oh, okay, great information. Next up, I got a multi question, and I want to start off with the first part is how do parents access a school rating?
Okay, yeah, school rating is very important, and a lot of parents don't know about the school rating. There is a website called Great Schools. Great Schools rate schools based on we call it the CCRPI. So it's a lot of different things that go into it. But what I would encourage parents to do is look at the demographics of a school, because a lot of time a school rating may be low, and then you want to question why is the school rating low. And a lot of parents think it's just because of the teachers. They just can't teach. They just don't know what they're doing.
Right.
And that's not necessarily the case. It goes back to what I was saying earlier. What kind of behavior issues are we having here? How many students are having social, emotional issues? How many outbursts are going on in class? What type of supports are in place at that particular school? And if you notice that some of those things are missing, then now you have a clear understanding of why the rating might be low. It might not have to do with the actual teachers, but a plethora of things that could cause a school rating to be low. So school ratings are important. Another website that's really, really good is...
drop the info.
Yeah, and I'm definitely going to make sure that I send a link so you can have those links. But the GOSA.georgia.gov, this provides parents, it's public information to a deeper breakdown of the school demographics coming straight from the governor's office. Also, the Georgia Department of Education has some really good information about schools and other things on that website. Yeah.
Well, you kind of answered the second part. I was going to say, like, what would the parents be able to access and learn about the school from searching the school rating?
Yeah, the school rating is going to tell you about, basically, it's going to talk about the data, because another thing that I think the community has missed is that it has turned into a data-driven society when it comes to the public schools. So everything that public school is doing, they're doing it based off of numbers. So they're looking at those test scores and how many students scored in a beginning level category for their grade level, how many students scored in a on grade level or developing almost at grade level or a distinguished level. And based on those numbers, you get these school ratings. Yeah, so the testing is really, really, really important for school ratings
Okay.
and attendance.
Good
Attendance is
info. Good
important.
info. Also, from your opinion, how can parents and teachers collaborate to make the students' school experience more effective?
I think having more conversations, and it's hard to communicate. A lot of parents want to be called for
Mm-hmm.
every little thing, and the way that the schedules are set up and the demands for the job is just not realistic to expect any one teacher
Mm-hmm.
to be constantly talking to you on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
So if there is some type of platform like the schools that I work in, we use something called Class Dojo,
I'm familiar with it.
and we update parents on what's going on in our classrooms, what's going on in the grade level, what's going on at the school
Mm-hmm.
regularly. And if parents have any more questions or concerns and want to speak, then
Mm-hmm.
they can send a message and let us know specifically, I need to talk to you about this. I need more understanding on that. That would be helpful. And then actually, another thing that would help is not speaking negatively about the school
Talk your
or
talk.
about teachers in front of kids.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think a lot of parents realize the damage that that does,
Mm-hmm.
because now you create this sense of, well, this is definitely not important. If the child
Mm-hmm.
already thought it wasn't important
Mm-hmm.
before that, then they heard you talking about, I can't stand this lady, she's so
Mm-hmm.
stupid, this and the third.
Right.
They're
Right.
gonna come to school like, why should I even listen to you? My mama can't even stand you. You're
Exactly.
stupid, and my
Exactly.
mama, like all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that we're trying to do just gets shattered
Mm-hmm.
based off of improperly communicating in front of kids
Mm-hmm.
about your dislikes on what's going on with the school.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like if there is an issue, instead of voicing your frustration in front of the kids,
Mm-hmm.
please speak to an adult at the school and try not to be like aggressive and
Mm-hmm.
combative. Just really just open up and express how you feel and have
Mm-hmm.
an adult courageous conversation about it,
Mm-hmm.
because there's not any problem that can't be solved.
Exactly. Right.
So, and going at it in an aggressive manner isn't always the best way to
Mm-hmm.
go about it. I think about it like being at a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
You don't necessarily want to get too aggressive with the waiter or the waitress,
Mm-hmm.
because they're going to be bringing out your food and you
Right.
don't
Right.
know what they're going to do to that food.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same thing with teachers. It's some teachers like, and I've worked with a lot of teachers. We'll be in some conferences and things will get really heated, and then the teacher is like, well, you know what? Forget they child.
Exactly. Right.
They can
Right.
sit
Right.
in the back. I don't care what they learn.
Right. Right. I've even heard teachers say. I've even heard teachers use the expression I already got mine. You got to get yours. It's kind
Yeah.
of like I've heard that used several times.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So it's just about making sure that just because someone has a title of a teacher, that you
Mm-hmm.
don't forget that they are human beings that have a life and they have feelings and triggers and everything.
Right.
just
Right.
like
Loved
you.
ones, etc.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So going in and expressing your concerns the way that you would want someone to express concerns to you, which should be respectfully.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great talk. Well, also I want to say this just as being around the community, and I'm involved a lot with kids through youth sports, and I want to speak on the differences before COVID and after COVID. And I want to know, did you witness the same thing in the school system? I know, like, during the time off, a lot of kids weren't playing ball, they weren't active every day. So when they finally got back to the sport, as far as like just being coming out to practice and able to go to the field and everything, they were lazy because they had sat around and did nothing. Like after post COVID, after you went back to the classroom, did you notice the difference in the kids' behavior and etc.?
Yeah, and in the particular schools that I've worked in, there have always been deficits. I always get
Mm-hmm.
tons of students that come into the grade level that I'm teaching now, fourth grade, and
Mm-hmm.
they academically are on a first grade level, kindergarten level,
Mm-hmm.
pre-K level. So we were already dealing with that.
Mm-hmm.
Then COVID hit, and it seemed to get a lot worse.
Mm-hmm.
The deficits are much larger.
Mm-hmm.
The attention span is much shorter,
Right.
and the drive to actually focus on a skill and enhance it
Mm-hmm.
is really not there
Right,
as,
right.
as much as it was. We were seeing from students before
Mm-hmm.
the pandemic and everything. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Good comparison. Good comparison.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else you would like to speak on?
Um, I just want to encourage the community to get involved in the public schools any way that you can, whether it's going to a PTA meeting, whether it's going to a board meeting, whether it's writing letters to the State Department. If there's something that you don't like, don't automatically go and make it about the teacher. Dig a little deeper, do a little bit more research, and get to the root of the problem, because a teacher is just a branch. There's a whole lot more attached to a teacher that the community really doesn't know about. But and to not think about schools as something separate from any other thing you do in life. The schools are a part of the community. They're here to serve the community. And if the community is unpleased with anything with the public school, I really want to encourage the community to bond together and do what's necessary to make those changes, so that it'll be a better experience for the students, for the teachers, for the parents, and everyone involved. Because at the end of the day, everyone is a part of the community. The teacher is not something that's separate from the community. A principal is not someone that's floating on a cloud higher.
Right, right.
We're all humans. We're all
Right.
breathing the same air, and we can all work together to make our experiences better. But the first step is actually being able to work together.
Great talk, great
Yeah.
talk. Well, I just want to say, being a father to a 13-year-old daughter, it's always good to see strong black women in the position of an educator. Ever since I grew up in school, that was something I always admired. And I just want to salute you for that and all the things that you're doing. And I just, as a parent, I want to thank you for some of the information that you dropped off, because you shed light to a lot of stuff that I wasn't aware of myself, and I'm pretty sure a lot of the viewers weren't either. So I just want to thank you for your time, your information, and the effort that you give to the community and to the kids. That means a lot.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it. We definitely got to do this again.
Definitely, definitely, man. Felt real good, man. I'm gonna let you shout yourself out before we get up out of here. Tell them who you is again. Let them talk your talk.
Once again, I am here as myself, Deidre Stevens, the public school educator. You may know me and you may see me on social media as London Taj. I have taken what I'm doing in the classroom and I've expanded it into media. So a lot of the different videos that you may see me doing, it's all me tying education into entertainment. So check me out, London Taj. You can find me on Instagram. You can find Classic Conversations, Classic.Conversations on Instagram as well. And you can find Classic Conversations on YouTube at the MorningStar channel.
Talk your talk. We'll have all the links in the video description. But again, like I said, I just want to thank you for sliding through, man. And once again, man, I'm your host, Billy D. Braille, a.k.a. Mr. Talkit, a.k.a. the voice box of the culture. You tune into another installment of Talk Your Talk. Yeah, yeah!